Before humans walked the earth, before civilizations rose and fell, there were beings of unimaginable power, demon gods who shaped the world in their own terrifying image. Tonight, we journey back into that forgotten age, exploring the primordial rulers whose shadows still echo through ancient myths and forbidden legends. These aren't mere monsters, they are cosmic forces, older than the gods we know, worshipped, feared, and sealed away by powers beyond comprehension. Prepare yourself as we uncover the truth behind the demon gods who ruled the world before humanity, creatures whose influence may still linger in the darkness of our world today. The demon gods who ruled the world before humanity. The birth of the first darkness. Before time gathered its first breath and before creation learned how to shape its own bones, there existed only the silent sea, an infinite, dreaming expanse where nothing moved and nothing stirred. It was not water, nor air, nor space. It was potential, a boundless void waiting to be awakened. No stars hung from its ceiling, no winds whispered across its body, and no gods yet walked its shores. It was the beginning before beginnings, an untouched cradle of existence. In that formless eternity, the silent sea pulsed with something deeper than emptiness, an ancient longing to become. From this longing came the earliest tremors of motion, gentle, slow, almost imperceptible. These tremors gathered like distant heartbeats until they swelled into a single cosmic ripple. That ripple became the first divide, the moment when the universe unconsciously separated itself into two opposing principles, the light that wished to illuminate and the darkness that wished to conceal. From the depths of this divide, the first darkness was born. It did not emerge in a burst or a blaze. It had no shape, no limbs, no voice. It was not yet a god, nor a creature, nor even a thought. Instead, it formed as a living veil, a primordial shadow that wrapped around the silent sea like a shroud. Where it passed, the void deepened. Where it lingered, potential thickened and coiled. The first darkness was less a being and more a presence, a consciousness awakening from the unlit womb of the cosmos. It perceived itself only as the sensation of hunger, the desire to envelop, to cradle, to gather all things into its endless embrace. As it expanded, the silent sea shivered. Something in the core of existence recognized that a great imbalance had been born. Darkness could not remain alone, it demanded a counterpart. Thus, as if drawn out of necessity, the first spark ignited, small, fragile, yet unbearably radiant. This spark became the first light, a luminous pulse that cleaved a path through the swelling shadow. Their meeting was not a clash but a recognition. Darkness saw light as the one thing it could not envelop, while light saw darkness as the one thing it could not illuminate. From this impossible opposition came the universe's first tension, an energy so immense that creation began to spill from their boundary like molten gold. The first darkness recoiled from the spark's touch, not out of fear but discovery. It realized it had form only in contrast to the light. Without the spark, it would sink back into formlessness. With the spark, it gained identity. It learned by watching the spark's radiant trails, observing how its warmth made shapes within the void. The first darkness, in turn, made its own shapes, vast silhouettes, mountains of shadow, oceans of night swirling like ink in water. These were not yet worlds but the first dreams of worlds. Light continued to expand, its brilliance revealing possibilities the silent sea had never known. It crystallized into lines, spirals, and patterns, each one a promise of order. Darkness followed closely, weaving itself between the lines, ensuring that nothing became too rigid, too absolute. In their dance, time began to flow like a river discovering its channel for the first time. Yet their harmony was fragile. The first light grew curious, stretching itself farther and farther. It illuminated the edges of the silent sea, uncovering mysteries that had long slept. Stars ignited from its touch, burning with the fire of newborn certainty. They were the universe's first declarations, blazing bodies of purpose. The first darkness watched these stars with a mixture of awe and sorrow, for each one reduced the places where it could rest untouched. But the stars also taught the darkness something vital: creation could be shaped, not merely observed. Inspired by this revelation, the first darkness began to mold itself into forms more intricate than drifting veils. It sculpted colossal shadows resembling beasts and titans, their bodies fluid and shifting. These beings had no names, no wills, and no permanence. They were the first experiments of a consciousness learning to craft. They roamed the newborn spaces between stars like wandering silhouettes. When the first light noticed these shadow shapes, it was fascinated. It had never imagined that darkness could create. Light, too, began forming beings of its own, glimmering figures made from strands of radiance. Unlike the shadow creatures, these beings were defined, smooth, and symmetrical. They existed with purpose, to explore, to illuminate, to understand. Inevitably, the children of light and the children of darkness crossed paths. Their meeting was confused, uncertain, and full of tension. The radiant beings tried to speak in pulses of light, the shadow beasts responded in ripples of darkness. Neither could understand the other. Where the luminous beings approached with curiosity, the shadow beasts responded with instinct. Some retreated, others roared, a few merged into larger silhouettes, growing even more monstrous. Seeing this discord, the first light attempted to shine more brightly, hoping its increased radiance would bring clarity. Instead, it overwhelmed the shadow creatures, dissolving some of them back into formless darkness. The first darkness felt this dissolution like wounds upon itself. It withdrew in anguish. A rift grew between light and darkness, not merely of distance but of purpose. Light now moved with the confidence of a creator who believed it had found the correct path. Darkness moved with the caution of a creator who feared its works would be unmade. The silent sea trembled again, this time not with potential but with conflict. To restore balance, the universe birthed a new force, the boundary, a vast, eternal frontier where neither light nor darkness could dominate. This boundary became the foundation of all realms yet to come. It was the seam between illumination and obscurity, the twilight shore between day and night. Here, the first darkness lingered, contemplating the meaning of its pain. It realized something profound: creation required not only shape but intention. Light's beings had purpose because light willed it, darkness's beings were only reflections of its instinct. So the first darkness, in the stillness of the boundary, began to think, truly think, for the first time. Its thoughts rippled across the void like waves of ink, gathering into complexities. It considered what it wished to create: beings who could exist in shadow without dissolving under light, beings who carried both mystery and strength. With deliberate will, the first darkness forged its first true creation, a colossal entity with a shape both defined and fluid, a body woven from threads of night dense enough to resist illumination. It gave this being a core of silence, so deep that even the brightest star could not pierce it. And it gave it a name: Umbratha, the keeper of the abyss. Umbratha rose from the shadow folds, its presence vast enough to eclipse constellations. The first light sensed this new creation and approached cautiously. To its surprise, Umbratha was not hostile, it remained still, watching with eyes like slivers of void. For the first time, light recognized the possibility of coexistence, of creatures made from darkness that could persist without conflict. Inspired, the first light created its own counterpart, Lumina, the herald of radiance, a towering being made of concentrated brilliance. When Lumina and Umbratha approached one another, the boundary shimmered. Their meeting was not confrontation but balance. They stood like twin pillars, guardians of two cosmic truths. The first darkness watched and felt something unfamiliar: pride. Its creation had not merely survived the light, it had stood beside it as an equal. The first light felt something similar: understanding. Together, light and darkness shaped new realities across the silent sea. Light traced pathways that became galaxies. Darkness stretched between them, forming nebulae and voids. Light sculpted the cores of stars, darkness molded the shadows that cooled planets into habitability. Their cooperation wove the universe into a tapestry of contrasts, where existence required both brilliance and obscurity. Yet the first darkness never forgot its injury, the dissolution of its early creations. It carried within itself a deep truth: every creation brings loss. Light did not feel this burden as heavily. It believed anything destroyed by brightness was never meant to be. But darkness understood impermanence intimately. From this understanding, it shaped a new concept, one that even light had never imagined: the idea of end. Endings became the first darkness's greatest creation. Not destruction, but completion. Rest. Transition. It whispered this idea into the fabric of reality, and the universe changed. Stars gained lifespans. Worlds cycled between growth and decay. Life, when it eventually emerged, would understand time not only as movement but as a journey with meaning. Light accepted this reluctantly. It valued beginnings and flourishing, while darkness valued conclusions and reflection. Yet both agreed that without one, the other would lose purpose. Thus, the cosmos stabilized, filled with the interplay of radiance and shadow. But the tale of the first darkness did not end with harmony. Deep within its core, it still felt the yearning from which it had been born, the longing to cradle all things, to return existence to stillness. It wondered whether creation had been a mistake, whether the silent sea had been more perfect before motion began. These thoughts became the seeds of cosmic melancholy, the ancient sadness woven through every night sky, reminding all beings that darkness is not merely the absence of light but the first mother of everything. And yet, despite its sorrow, the first darkness chose not to reclaim the universe. Instead, it became its hidden foundation. Every shadow cast by a flame, every nightfall on every world, every quiet corner the stars failed to reach, all are whispers of the first darkness, watching, remembering, longing. Light may guide, but darkness holds. Creation may expand, but the first darkness embraces all that slips beyond illumination's reach. It remains as it always was, the first presence, the first witness, the first womb that nurtured reality before reality knew itself. And when the final star dims, and the last breath of time exhales into silence, it will be the first darkness who waits, not as an enemy but as the eternal caretaker, ready to gather the universe back into the dream from which it was born. Varkulan, the devouring storm. Before the first temples rose, before humanity carved its earliest symbols into stone, the world trembled beneath forces so ancient that even the gods whispered their names with caution. Among these primordial terrors, one stood unmatched in ferocity and hunger: Varkulan, the devouring storm, a being neither flesh nor spirit but a living tempest born from the catastrophic chaos that existed before creation settled into order. The birth of the storm. Long before the world seas were calm or the mountains still, the skies were battlegrounds where formless powers clashed in searing arcs of cosmic lightning. From these violent tempests emerged Varkulan. He was not born in the way mortals or gods were born. He was ignited, a spontaneous eruption of raw, unbound power awakened by the collision of two chaotic forces: Tempus, the spirit of eternal motion, and Vorgal, the essence of endless hunger. When their cosmic energies met, they did not destroy each other. Instead, they fused into a monstrous consciousness, an intelligence that knew only one desire: to consume. Thus Varkulan arose, an immense storm whose spiral stretched across the horizon, a vortex of black wind streaked with violet lightning. His voice was thunder, his breath the screaming gale, and wherever he moved, the sky dimmed as if the world itself recoiled. The Age of Roaring Skies. During the first Chaos Age, the world was still half-formed. Land shifted like living clay, oceans boiled with newborn heat, and the sky cracked constantly with storms older than light. Into this realm Varkulan roamed freely, devouring anything unfortunate enough to cross his path. He consumed not as beasts do, but as a force of unmaking. When a mountain stood too tall, he swallowed its peak. When a forest grew too wide, he uprooted every tree. When young creatures crawled from the primordial mud, he erased their entire species before they drew their second breath. And yet he was not malicious. Varkulan did not hate. He simply existed as an unstoppable cycle, the storm that fed upon creation to maintain the balance of chaos. Some ancient philosophers would later say that without Varkulan, the world would have bloated with uncontrolled growth, collapsing under its own excess. But to the early spirits, titans, and protogods, he was a terror beyond imagination. The first clash of powers. As creation slowly stabilized, the first sovereign beings, creatures of elemental authority, arose to sculpt the world into something livable. These were the world shapers, colossal entities formed from earth, sea, fire, and sky. They carved mountains, filled oceans, and wove the laws of nature into order. But every time they created, Varkulan uncreated. He shredded their islands with cyclones. He scattered their newly formed rivers and turned them to steam. He tore holes in the sky they were trying to calm. Eventually, the world shapers realized their work would never stand unless the devouring storm was stopped. Thus began the War of Roaring Skies. The Battle of the Four Shapers. The four greatest world shapers, Magna of Stone, Akira of Tides, Solmath the Flameheart, and Erindis the Wind Weaver, combined their powers to imprison Varkulan. Magna raised mountains to block the storm's advance. Akira unleashed tidal waves to quench his lightning. Solmath burned the air itself to weaken the tempest. Erindis, mistress of the skies, tried to bend Varkulan's winds to her will. But the devouring storm could not be contained. He dissolved Magna's mountains into sand. He vaporized Akira's tides with heat from his inner core. He extinguished Solmath's eternal fire. And Erindis, proud and fearless, he nearly consumed whole. For Varkulan was not merely a storm. He was a hunger that adapted, growing stronger as he devoured the powers of those who challenged him. When Erindis realized she was no match for him, she retreated into the upper heavens. But she did not leave defeated. Instead, she carried with her the secret of his nature. Varkulan fed on creation itself, but he could not feed on what had not yet been born. This insight would eventually save the world. The secret of unborn things. Erindis returned with a plan. She revealed to the other world shapers that the only way to weaken Varkulan was to create something he could not consume, the structure of potential, not matter, an unborn reality, a blueprint rather than a finished creation. So they forged a great celestial device called the Ether Seal, a swirling construct of pure possibility. It was not a weapon but a trap, designed to lure Varkulan with the illusion of infinite energy he could never actually devour. For Varkulan, the seal appeared as the most succulent feast imaginable, a storm of unshaped creation, endless and irresistible. When the devouring storm sensed it, he rushed toward it with all the ravenous fury of his nature. But the moment he engulfed the ether seal, it detonated, not with light or fire, but with stillness. The explosion was a wave of absolute calm. Wind ceased. Lightning froze. The sky fell silent. For the first time since his birth, Varkulan stopped moving. He struggled to absorb the unborn energy, but it slipped through him, giving nothing in return. The stillness spread deeper, locking his spirals, solidifying the winds that defined his being. Erindis and the other shapers then wove chains of solidified air, molten earth, and ocean-forged mist around the immobilized storm. They bound him into a colossal sphere, half cyclone, half prison, then sealed it beneath the deepest chasm on earth. Thus ended the first Chaos Age. Or so they believed. The whisper within the storm. Though imprisoned, Varkulan was not destroyed. Storms cannot die, they only change shape. Over countless ages, the devouring storm condensed into a central core, a heart of eternal thunder. Its pulses created tremors felt by early civilizations who had no idea what slept beneath them. They gave these tremors names. The hunger shakes. The whispering winds. The thunderheart murmurs. Shamans, oracles, and prophets heard faint echoes from the depths, a voice like a distant storm calling for release. Some interpreted it as a plea. Others as a threat. A few believed Varkulan had learned patience. They were right. The devouring storm had not forgotten the taste of creation. In his slumber he dreamed, and each dream reshaped him. No longer a mindless force of consumption, Varkulan slowly awakened into a thinking entity, a storm with purpose. The coming of mortals. When humanity emerged, fragile, curious, clever, their existence fascinated the imprisoned Titan. Unlike the gods and shapers, they did not wield power, and yet they created endlessly. They built villages, then cities. They carved stone and shaped metal. They wrote stories, crafted music, explored the world, and filled it with meaning. Every act of creation echoed faintly through the layers of the earth, feeding Varkulan's hunger in whispers. But he could not consume it physically. He could only watch, wait, and grow more aware. In time, humans discovered the ancient chasm where he slept. They felt the electric pulse beneath the ground, saw clouds gather unnaturally overhead, and feared the place. They built shrines around the edges to honor, or appease, the unseen power below. These shrines evolved into the cult of the devouring sky, a secretive order that interpreted Varkulan's faint tremors as divine messages. They believed creation had grown impure and overcrowded, and that only the storm god could cleanse the world. In dusty scrolls they wrote, "When the world swells with excess, the devouring storm shall rise again to reset the balance." Most dismissed them as mad. But their prophecy contained a truth the gods had tried to bury. The weakening of the ether seal. As centuries turned into millennia, the ether seal slowly eroded. Not because of age, but because humanity unknowingly chipped at its foundations. Mining. Earthquakes. Deep drilling. War. Explosions beneath the crust. Each strike, each shift, each rumble weakened the bindings that kept Varkulan still. The world shapers had long faded from existence, leaving no one to reinforce the prison. And so the devouring storm stirred again. The awakening of Varkulan. When the seal finally cracked, it was subtle, a whisper of wind where there should have been no wind at all. A faint rumble on a clear day. A spark of lightning in a cloudless sky. Then came the storms. Not ordinary storms but colossal, intelligent tempests that formed in places untouched by weather for centuries. They moved with purpose, searching, testing the strength of the world. The cult of the devouring sky rejoiced. They called these storms the heralds of Varkulan. They were right. Each herald storm was a fragment of Varkulan's awakening consciousness sent upward like a scout. They learned the state of the world. They tasted the creations of mankind, cities, machines, monuments, ships, and longed for the feast that awaited above. Finally, one night, the sky split in two. A vortex of black clouds spiraled open above the ancient chasm. Purple lightning webbed across the heavens like veins. Winds howled with the voices of the lost First Age. The ground ruptured, and from the abyss rose the full, reborn form of Varkulan, vast, luminous, terrifying. He no longer resembled a formless tempest. The ages of dreaming had given him shape. He had an immense storm body swirling like a tornado of stars, and at its center was an eye, massive, radiant, aware. The devouring storm had awakened. Humanity's last stand. Unlike the ancient titans, humanity could not overpower him. Their weapons were meaningless against a being of pure elemental hunger. But they had something the early shapers did not, the power of knowledge. Scholars rediscovered fragments of the old legends and devised a desperate plan to forge a new ether seal by combining human ingenuity with remnants of divine law. A great gathering was called. Priests, mags, philosophers, astronomers, and craftsmen formed the circle of stillness. Their goal was not to destroy Varkulan, such a feat was impossible, but to contain him once more. They constructed 7 pillars around the chasm, each carved with runes representing potential futures, unborn ideas, and unmanifested creation. The pillars resonated with energy the storm could not consume. As Varkulan advanced, lightning tearing through the sky, the circle activated the pillars. A wave of pure potential surged outward, halting the devouring storm once more. He roared, not in rage but in recognition. He understood the trap. But this time, he fought back with more than winds. He used will. The storm expanded, pushing against the barrier, forcing the pillars to crack and flicker. The struggle threatened to tear the world apart. But humanity stood firm. Through the combined will of thousands, the pillars held. The waves of potential wrapped around Varkilan's spirals, slowing his movement, condensing his form, forcing him inward. With a final thunderous roar, he collapsed into a condensed sphere of silent, swirling air, a new prison, smaller but more stable, forged not by titans but by human resolve. And so the devouring storm was sealed again. Explanation: the mythic meaning of Varkilan. Varkilan represents the inevitable forces of destruction that lurk behind every act of creation. In mythic symbolism, he is entropy, the natural counterbalance to growth. He is change, unstoppable and impartial. He is renewal, for through destruction comes new beginnings. Every ancient culture has some version of a devouring storm, cyclones, divine tempests, sky serpents, or wind demons. Varkilan embodies all these fears. He is the reminder that nothing humanity builds is permanent. Yet the story also celebrates humanity's unique power: we create meaning. Even if storms tear down cities, humans rebuild, innovate, and imagine new futures. The ether seal, made of unborn potential, symbolizes imagination, the one thing destruction cannot consume. Thus the myth's message is clear. Creation and destruction are eternal rivals. But as long as humans continue to imagine, they can hold back even the devouring storm. Ishkara, mother of venom and night. Long before humanity learned to fear the darkness, long before gods carved order upon the heavens, the world belonged to shadows older than time. Among these ancient beings, one name was whispered with dread across both mortal and divine realms: Ishkara, the mother of venom and night. Her story is scattered like fragments of poison ink across forgotten tablets, half-destroyed seals, and banned oral traditions, tales that were never meant to survive but refused to die. The birth in the primordial chasm. Creation myths often begin with light, but the story of Ishkara begins with hunger, an emptiness so vast that it breathed as if alive. In the earliest epoch, when the world was still a wounded scar carved by clashing cosmic forces, a deep rift split the land. The ancients called it Namtazal, the chasm of what should not be. From this rift oozed black serpentine mist, a fluid mixture of shadow and venom. And from the mist emerged Ishkara. She did not enter the world the way gods and demons did, formed by cosmic will or divine spark. Instead, she coagulated, like a poison droplet condensing into shape. Her skin was the color of midnight oil, pulsing with swirling patterns like living ink. Her eyes were cold, luminous slits, a serpent's gaze sharpened into predatory intelligence. Her hair flowed like streams of molten shadow. She was not born to rule, but she was born to consume, and that made her powerful. The moment she tasted the air, the world trembled. The nocturnal creatures of the young earth bowed instinctively, recognizing in her the scent of primeval dominance. Night dimmed itself around her, becoming heavier and thicker, her natural element, her throne. Where she walked, plants blackened. Streams turned bitter. The wind chilled with whispers that did not originate from any mouth. And from the chasm, the serpents of night slithered forth, her firstborn children. The venom that could kill gods. Venom in ancient myth was more than a substance, it was a force, a metaphysical corruption capable of warping body and soul. Ishkara's venom surpassed all known poisons. Unlike earthly toxins, which affected flesh, her venom devoured essence. Legends say that her blood, paradoxically liquid and smoke, carried 3 layers of corruption. Eretnal, the fleshbreaker, a poison that melted stone and bone. Ashkaran, the mind-piercer, a toxin that induced nightmares so vivid they bled into reality. Dargusha, the godslayer, a venom so ancient it predated even the divine immunity of the younger gods. Myths tell of a time when Ishkara tested her venom on the cosmic beings who attempted to seal the chasm of Namtazal. A minor deity named Ashtu, protector of newborn stars, dared to confront her, believing that night itself could be commanded by the heavens. But Ishkara's venom slipped past his divine defenses like a whisper past a sleeping guard. His celestial body decayed into stardust, and his scream echoed across the skies. The constellation later known as the Fallen Torch was said to be the remains of his divine form. It was after this incident that the gods declared Ishkara an enemy of cosmic order. But she did not seek war. War, after all, implied equality. Ishkara did not see the gods as opponents. She saw them as prey. The Night Kingdom. While the gods fought over sky, sea, and earth, Ishkara built her domain beneath the world's skin. Her palace was not carved but grown, a structure of living shadow rooted in the world's nerve lines. It pulsed like a heart and breathed like a beast. The creatures of the night belonged to her: bats, owls, wolves, serpents, scorpions. But these were merely the surface. Deeper below, she commanded an army of beings shaped by toxic darkness, writhing shadowworms with venomous fangs, serpents made of starlit ink, spectral panthers whose roars dissolved sanity. These creatures worshipped her not with rituals, but instinctively. She was the mother of everything that feared the sun yet dominated the night. But most feared of all were her children known as the Venomborn. These were humanoid beings molded from her own breath, warriors with obsidian skin and forked tongues, loyal without question. They served as emissaries, spreading her influence into the world above. Whispers say they taught ancient shamans the first poison rites, the dark rituals that gave humans the knowledge to craft venom strong enough to slay monsters. Others say they were responsible for the first assassinations in human history. To Ishkara, night was not mere absence of light. Night was a weapon. Night was her womb. The seduction of the moon god. Not all gods despised her. One, in secret, desired her. Soon, the young moon god, known for his silver beauty and melancholy glow, wandered the earth at night, driven by curiosity. When he first saw Ishkara by the chasm's edge, her shadowed form lit only by moonlight, he was captivated. She, however, saw him as a puzzle, light that did not burn her. For many nights, they met in secret. Soon offered her silver star fire. Ishkara offered him forbidden knowledge of the world beneath the world. Their romance was a paradox, moonlight touching venom, purity mingling with corruption. But love between divine and primordial beings never ends quietly. When the sun god Utu discovered their union, he was furious. For he knew that if Ishkara gained the moon's power, night would swell uncontrollably, consuming creation. The gods intervened. Their armies stormed Ishkara's kingdom, attempting to capture Sun and purify him of her influence. Ishkara, for the first time, felt something unfamiliar, fear, not for herself, but for another being. And so she unleashed the full power of her venom. The battlefield became a nightmare of dissolving bodies and screaming spirits. Venom-born warriors tore through divine soldiers. Shadow beasts devoured celestial light until the land turned pitch black. In the chaos, Sun tried to reason with her, begging her to stop, to flee, to hide with him beyond the world's edge. But Ishkara was no creature of escape. She was a force of nature, ancient, immovable. When the gods finally reached Sun, they shattered his silver form and imprisoned his spirit in the upper sky. From that night onward, the moon no longer glowed with soft warmth, it became a cold witness, forever separated from the goddess who had loved him. Ishkara's scream of grief cracked mountains. Her tears fell as droplets of venom from the sky, creating what certain desert cultures later called the Black Rain, a storm that poisoned entire rivers for centuries. Her sorrow turned to hatred. And night itself changed, as if mourning with its mother. The curse of eternal twilight. After the loss of Sun, Ishkara became something far more terrible. She began weaving a ritual known only as the Night Binding, the spell meant to stretch twilight across the world, preventing day from fully rising. To humans, twilight was gentle. But to the primordial forces, twilight was a prison, a liminal state trapping all things in the border between light and shadow. If completed, the ritual would have ended the cycle of day. No dawn, no noon, no renewal. Only the eternal venomous dusk of Ishkara. The gods panicked. Even those who had respected the night saw the threat. They descended upon her kingdom. This time, they did not aim to wound or banish her. They aimed to erase her from existence. The battle that followed was said to be the darkest conflict recorded on clay or carved in stone. The sun dimmed. Animals fled. The tides froze. The earth itself recoiled, knowing it could not survive the clash of orders. Ishkara fought like a collapsing star, violent, unpredictable, unstoppable. Her venom melted weapons forged in divine fire. Her children died by the thousands, but for each fallen, another rose from her shadow. At last, the chief gods used forbidden seals to bind her. They sank chains of celestial iron into her form, chains not forged, but spoken into existence through divine command. They cast her into a prison beneath the earth, under the deepest roots of the world tree. Her kingdom crumbled. Her children scattered. Night, once alive, became merely darkness. And Ishkara, mother of venom and night, was buried in a tomb of silent shadow. Yet she still breathes. Ancient texts claim that Ishkara is not dead. She sleeps, dreams, waits. Many cultures tell of strange tremors beneath mountains or sudden black storms that poison waterways. These are said to be her stirrings, moments when she shifts in her slumber. Her venom-born children, though rare, still appear in stories as shadowed figures teaching poison craft or guiding lost travelers into cursed valleys. There are whispers that during eclipses, when the moon hides its face from the sun, her power momentarily returns. Some say the moon god soon still mourns her. Some say he still shines for her. Some say he quietly weakens the sun's grip on the world during eclipse in hope that one day, Ishkara will awaken. And when she does, the world will once again know true night. A night that breathes. A night that kills. A night ruled by the mother of venom and shadow. Explanation of the myth. Ishkara is conceived here as a primordial demon goddess, not of evil, but of untamed cosmic nature predating ordinary gods. She embodies two ancient forces associated throughout global mythologies with danger and the unknown, venom and night. Symbolism of venom. Historically, venom symbolizes corruption, transformation, forbidden knowledge, death that bypasses physical strength. Ishkara's venom is mythologized as cosmic, able to destroy not just bodies but divine essence. This elevates her to a threat even the gods cannot ignore. Symbolism of night. Night in ancient cultures is a dual force. A place of birth for spirits. A realm of fear. A veil hiding unseen truths. By making Ishkara the mother of night, she becomes the source of every fear humans associate with darkness. The love story. The romance between Ishkara and the moon god soon explains why night and moonlight are connected. Why the moon is distant, cold, and sorrowful. Why eclipses feel eerie or dangerous. This myth frames lunar phenomena as echoes of their forbidden love. The fall and imprisonment. Most ancient demonology includes a primordial being threatening the cosmic order. A divine war. Banishment rather than annihilation. Ishkara's imprisonment under the world tree roots aligns with mythic motifs like the Titanomachy, the chaining of Fenrir, or the sealing of Tiamat's children. Why she still matters. Ishkara remains a metaphor for darkness that cannot be erased. Fear that sleeps but never dies. The world's primordial past, always threatening to reawaken. Her myth resonates because it explains why night still feels alive, why venomous creatures inspire dread, and why humanity fears what lies beneath the earth. And so, the veil lifts on the terrifying age before humanity, an era ruled not by kings or heroes, but by demon gods whose power shaped the foundations of existence itself. If these ancient beings truly influenced the world we inherited, what else lies buried in forgotten myths, waiting to be uncovered? Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world before our own. If you enjoyed exploring these primordial rulers, hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, the oldest stories are often the darkest.